In sports, every team needs a defensive presence that can do the dirty work so the other guys can perform better. And the same goes for your vehicle's engine. Pennzoil Synthetics is that enforcer, that 7-footer, giving you complete protection for top engine performance. Make the switch to Pennzoil today.
Well, let's go. At 9:30 a.m. Eastern, our Adam Schefter reports that former Colts cornerback Vontae Davis spending today with the 49ers. According to sources, Davis has already visited with Buffalo and Cleveland. Then around 11:20 a.m., the Tampa Bay Bucks released two-time Pro Bowl running back Doug Martin. And a few minutes later, a source told ESPN Eagles head coach Doug Peterson he's decided to promote his wide receivers coach Mike Groh to offensive coordinator. So they're able to, of course, make those replacements there as they get their coaching staff together. And what an exciting day it is because the offseason officially begins today. The 2-week window to franchise tag players opens up. The NFL Scouting Combine starts on February 27th at the Lucas Oil Stadium. And then, of course, free agency begins on March 14th. We're about 3 weeks away. But before then, teams will try to keep their key players with that franchise tag. So a little calendar action to get you all set. Welcome into NFL Live, everybody. Insider Dan Graziano right here. Front office insider Louis Riddick and Hall of Fame GM Bill Polian at the end there. I'm Dianna Russini. Welcome. And it really feels like a holiday for us today because it's the first day teams can place franchise tags on players. So we got lots to talk about. Organizations, they've got about 2 weeks. Teams can basically have 3 different options in terms of the tag, right? They got the non-exclusive franchise tag, the exclusive franchise tag, and the transition tag. So who are we keeping an eye on? Well, we got Le'Veon Bell, of course, is the big name. Case Keenum, DeMarcus Lawrence, Jarvis Landry, Allen Robinson, and Sammy Watkins. But let's begin with the big one. Bell. He turned down a multi-year contract offer last year that was set to average over $12 million per year and pay him $30 million in the first 2 years, $42 million in the first 3. Well, instead, he played last season under the $12.1 million franchise tag. He recently said he wants to help reset the market at the running back position. Bell is also on record saying that he wants to be paid as the top running back and one of the top wideouts, and the production he's shown in the last 5 seasons may certainly warrant that. The running back has averaged 129 scrimmage yards per game thus far in his career, and that's the highest mark by any player in NFL history among players to appear in at least 50 games. And we've got a memorable Bell moment just to get the juices flowing there in the brain. In case you forgot, Week 7, Bengals, Steelers, Big Ben drops back, dumps it to Bell, and makes several defenders miss before delivering that pretty devastating stiff arm to Dre Kirkpatrick, a 42-yard gain. Not sure if his agent is showing the Steelers front office these highlight clips here of Bell, but I'm sure that they have them pretty much memorized at this point. That said, our Jeremy Fowler, he actually covers the Steelers for ESPN. He talks to both sides, the Steelers organization and Le'Veon Bell's camp. So at this point, Jeremy, what do we know?
Well, Diana, good afternoon. And the Steelers have been formulating their plan for weeks, and they are making budgetary considerations for that $14.5 million tag. They are ready to use it, and based on asking around the league and people around the building, I do expect them to use it. It could be closer to March, though, because the NFL Combine coming up next week. That's typically where the Steelers like to do a lot of their business. That would give them a chance to meet with Bell's reps and set the groundwork for a potential deal in the weeks and months to come. And for Bell, really, guarantees are going to be crucial here. You know, you can make a big deal about per year averages, but Bell's told me that the structure of this deal, particularly in the first couple years, is going to be important. The Steelers typically don't give a lot of guarantees beyond that signing bonus, and then it's just sort of play as you go, pay as you perform, and so they're going to have to find a sweet spot there coming up.
Of course, he just turned 26 years old, and you know, Jeremy, just based on what you know about the Steelers, you've been covering them for years. Who do you think blinks first here?
Well, Diana, that's a great question. And this might be unpopular considering teams usually win over on running backs, but I think the Steelers might blink first here for a few reasons. Bell has been clear, and you pointed it out a little bit ago. He's told me multiple times, I want to be a standard bearer for the running back market, a sagging market. He said, I've never had this much money in my life as I already have now, so I'm going to do this right. and I'm going to capitalize on my position. And he knows that the Steelers know that any deal they structure, they can probably get out of in a few years with a minimal cap crunch if they do it with a big signing bonus that they can sort of maneuver in 2019 or 2020. And so he knows they also don't want to repeat what happened last year where he's missing camp and they're not fully loaded in August. So they want to be ready to go with no distractions, and that's both sides.
You know, they definitely don't want to go through that again. That's our Jeremy Fowler. Thanks so much, Jeremy. So we bring it back here on the desk, and I want to start with Bill Polian, who's had to make decisions just like this in the past. Bill, how do you see this getting resolved?
Well, I think in the end he's going to play on the tag because I think they'll probably overreach a little bit. But there's no question that the Steelers are not going to let him go out to the market. And with a running back, if you look at it from the club's perspective, they have short careers. So for every year that you have him under contract and playing with no risk to the future in terms of dead money, that's a pretty good year. So the number may be high, but there isn't a lot of residual with it. So that's the Steelers' point of view. From his point of view, he wants to arrive at a number that gives him long-term security and big money. And the idea of setting the running back market, that's got to get out of the equation, I think, before you make a deal, because a long-term deal carries with it the very real potential of dead money. Plus, Le'Veon has off-field issues which have to be addressed in the contract. That makes the contract harder to negotiate.
Yeah, so what are the challenges in terms of giving Bell a long-term deal for this front office?
Yeah, I think Bill just kind of really touched on it. There's a number of them, right? One is the financial risk that comes with giving a large signing bonus to a player here who you don't know whether or not he is going to toe the line and do the things that are necessary to keep himself on the football field, number one, with his decision-making. Number two, every year that he plays, every carry that he racks up has a wear and tear on his body. He's already shown that he's susceptible to injury, just like every other player, but Le'Veon has missed time because of it. Okay, so those are the challenges. Number three, look, I think every front office inherently is value-driven, all right? And I don't think anybody goes into free agency, whether it's with one of the players that they love or not, and goes, hey, you know what? We're willing to set the market. We just want to set the market for this guy right now, even though they love him. And I can tell you from the people who I know in Pittsburgh, they love this guy on the football field. They love this guy on the football field. But people are also look at it from the other side as far as doing the best deal for the club, and they go, there's been a couple young running backs that have come into the league here that have kind of taken the league, I don't want to say by storm, but have caught people's attention in terms of being possible replacement types in terms of options. When you look at what Alvin Kamara did in New Orleans and you look at what Kareem Hunt did, I'm not going to say that's going to color or affect their judgment to the point where it will hinder them from getting a deal done with Le'Veon, but you know that will be in the back of their mind that, look, there's going to come a point in time where they have to say we can't go any further. We just can't. We just don't know where that is right now. What does Le'Veon really want? How far are the Steelers really willing to go?
And it's a unique situation and a unique player, and there are a variety of issues, as you mentioned. Jeremy mentioned one that is the way the Steelers do contracts. They put all that guarantee in the signing bonus. They don't like to guarantee the year-to-year paragraph 5 salary. And as you mentioned, with a player like Le'Veon Bell, who has a history of not always being available, do you want to load up that signing bonus all the way and be out that money? The other thing is this notion of resetting the running back market. He's talking about destroying the running back market. I mean, you could get a $9 million a year contract, and that would reset the running back market. The highest paid right now is Devontae Freeman at $8.25. Mm-hmm. But that's way less than what Le'Veon Bell wants. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not going to take $9 million a year. So he's talking about something that goes well beyond that into the $12, $13 million a year range or more. And in that case, I just don't see the Steelers making that kind of upfront commitment. And I also don't see the Steelers making an exception to the way they structure their contracts. And that's why I agree with Bill. And based on the conversations I've had with people around the league and close to this situation, I think the expectation is he's franchised again.
So you think he's going to get tagged. And so, Bill, you agreed with him that you think as well that he will get tagged.
I think if there's a way to make the deal where both sides meet in the middle or even a little on the Le'Veon side of the line, the Steelers will do it because they value his contribution, but they're not going to tear up their entire approach to things just to get him done, particularly with a running back whose career could be over like that.
Especially when you look at who just won the Super Bowl. While the Eagles had good running backs, they didn't have an elite quarterback. The Patriots in the past, they didn't have an elite running back. They had good running backs. So you can see what they're thinking there. So now time for panic or patience here. So we bring up the Super Bowl. Can the Steelers win a Super Bowl without Bell? Dan, are you panicking? Okay. So you're panicking.
Don't be so quick.
They haven't won it with him. So, I mean, but I think, look, this is a guy, we talk about what the Eagles did. The Steelers' offense obviously different from the Eagles, and it runs through Le'Veon Bell. So 450 touch per year guy. Without him, they'd have to change everything. And he is, he makes a good point about being unique, about being a receiving option for them, an important one, in addition to being their bell cow running back. So, no, I don't think I don't think they remain a top Super Bowl contender if he's not on the team. I expect that he will be on the team, but if something happens and he weren't, I don't think that's something they could just fix overnight.
I'm going to be a little contrarian with you, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an unorthodox argument saying this. You know what? I'm going to go patient on this. I think they can win a Super Bowl without him simply because, one, they haven't won a Super Bowl with him. Two, because really the problem is not on offense. And I think they could get enough production on the offensive side of the football if Le'Veon wasn't there, although he is a huge component. Look, I'm not trying to discount his production at all. But until the Steelers do something either philosophically / structurally and personnel-wise in the secondary, they're not going to win anything because they can't stop any team that can throw the football. And that's just a fact. So until they do that, I'm going to remain patient. If they don't have him, to me, it doesn't really matter.
So, in other words, they could use that money that they use on Bell to fix that defense. So, you're going to be patient on that.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. Panic or patience? Can they win without him?
That's my guy.
Nope. Your guy.
That's the way they're constituted right now. They would have to replace Le'Veon Bell with someone of equivalent talent. That someone isn't out there. So, while I agree with Lou that they have more serious problems on defense, they're not the old Steelers on defense by a long shot, and Shazier is probably not coming back. Thank God he's okay, but he's probably not coming back to football. So, as presently constituted, Le'Veon Bell makes up for those defensive shortcomings. That's why they made it to the championship game and got blasted by Jacksonville, who really couldn't throw the ball very much. The whole defensive structure is not what it used to be by a long shot. So they need Le'Veon Bell to have any chance.
Yeah.
If they don't have him, then it's a reset really throughout the whole organization.
Yeah, Jacksonville certainly has an elite running back in their organization. Meantime, we mentioned that Minnesota, they don't really have an elite running back as well. But you know what they do need at this point?
Yeah, they do. He was hurt.
Yeah. That's a good point. We got Case Keenum here. What the situation here? Of course, he was that backup quarterback signing in free agency last spring to the Vikings, and then he went to become the starter, replacing that injured Sam Bradford. The Vikings could tag him, eating a $23 million cap charge this year. Minnesota has over $56 million in cap space, and so they certainly can afford this. And Keenum played some of his best football last year when he was outside the tackle box. Per NFL Next Gen Stats, he threw 7 touchdowns, no picks on plays of that kind, the most TDs without an interception by any player in the league. Keenum's completion rate and passing yards on such throws were also among the best. So, guys, this one's going to be a no-brainer when we go to look back at an elite moment
what'd you
for
pick?
Case Keenum. What do you think I
What'd
picked?
you pick?
10 seconds left in the game. Vikings down 1. A drop back to Stephon Diggs, evades a tackle. Runs all the way for the game-winning touchdown. Of course, it has now been named the Minnesota Miracle. The Vikings advance to the NFC Championship game. I think fans were sold on him, though, before that moment, but that certainly didn't help. So when the season gets here, guys, will he be tagged, have agreed to a long-term deal, or do you think he's going to hit free agency? So, Dan, I'll start with you.
I think he'll be signed to a long-term deal in Minnesota. I think they may tag him in the meantime while they work on it, but I think ultimately he goes back there. The one caveat I want to throw out there is if the Vikings, and we don't know yet if they will, but if they make a pursuit of Kirk Cousins, I believe they're a team that could get him. And if that's the case, then I think Keenum goes elsewhere. If what Keenum wants is to break the bank somewhere and they don't franchise him, then I think he could go elsewhere. But I think unless they're in the Cousins hunt, I believe that Keenum is their quarterback next year, and he's probably signed to a deal.
Bill, they have so much information on him. He was basically their starter for the entire season. Does it make sense for them to do whatever it takes to keep him because they have so much knowledge?
Well, for one thing, you don't have to do whatever it takes. For another, they have to be sure that they're going to have the same kind of offensive structure because a lot of that statistic was based on bootlegs, not on breaking the pocket and broken plays. It's a designed bootleg, which they do very well, and he does very well. But in the short run, the short answer is keep him. You had great success with him. Why would you change? And it's not likely that if they tag and talk, that they won't reach a long-term agreement.
Lou, Bill, you both can answer. So what is Case Keenum's worth? What do you think he's worth?
You know, I have said I would see this contract getting done for me based on my research somewhere between in the $21-22 million a year range. And would you take that for Case Keenum? Would you be comfortable paying that as opposed to getting into the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes, which may get up at 27, 28 plus? Is it really that big of a difference? Do you really want to do that? That's why, for me, this seems like, and I'm assuming, I'm not going to speak for Case Keenum. I'm assuming he'd be comfortable with being paid that amount of money, $22 million a year. I would assume he'd take that money. Now, there are obviously some warning signs kind of a little bit with the Vikings as far as their unwillingness to really commit to him all year long, as far as the verbiage that you heard coming from their head coach all year long, how he wouldn't really fully back the guy. It was always like from week to week. Well, you know what, Case looked okay. Well, Teddy's coming along. Well, it never seemed like a full 100% buy-in. It'll be interesting to see if that has any bearing on their ability to strike a long-term deal.
The Teddy situation, whether or not he's back with the Vikings because his contract is told or whether he hits the market, will have a big impact on the number for Case Keenum. I think Case Keenum's going to be there no matter what, but the number is impacted by what happens to Teddy.
Back here on NFL Live today, the first day teams can place franchise tags on players. Organizations have about 2 weeks to get it done, and we are keeping a close eye on lots of players, including this guy, Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence, one of the best edge rushers last season. The 25-year-old comes with 2 back surgeries under his belt. He had never come close to matching last year's production before. So the Cowboys are going to have to decide if this season's performance is the real DeMarcus Lawrence, or if that was maybe just a fluke, in which, we'd probably consider a tag there. Really quite the season for him. Per NFL Next Gen stats, he produced 87 total disruptions, which combines pressures and run stuffs into one metric. That was the second most among defensive linemen in 2017, trailing Oakland's Khalil Mack. And the moment for Lawrence's season in one play to describe the type of damage he did. Keep an eye on him as he bowls right by his blocker, crushes Trevor Siemian. The ball's loose, and the Cowboys recover just short of the goal line, swims right by his blocker, and slams the QB right to the ground. One of Lawrence's 14 and a half sacks of the year, and you just have to wonder if he's going to be able to replicate this. And you know that Stephen Jones has gone on the record saying this is a deal he wants to get done. He's been very aggressive about it. So, Lou, I want to start with you. How does this turn out? Does he get tagged, or do they go the long-term contract?
He gets tagged and they get a deal done. He's going to be 26 years old in April, I believe. And a guy who had a career season. Look, I understand from a general manager, from a contract negotiator's point of view, it's a nightmare in this regard. He has a history. He has injury history. He has a decision-making history. And he's a guy who just busted out his best year of his career by far in a contract year. That sends off red flags like, okay, so what are we setting ourselves up for here? Is this a guy who, once we go ahead and break the bank for him, because we need him, because we need pass rushers, we need game closers, is all of a sudden you're going to see that ultimate turn go downhill again? That's what you're scared of, but you can't let him go. You can't.
Bill, Lou references that it's a risk. How can you determine if this is the guy, if this is really Lawrence, or this was just a fluke year?
Tag, and let's see what he does.
I'm not
going to invest long-term here. So there are too many red flags. Big year in your walk year. Injuries. Off-field issues. Yep. Too many red flags.
Dan?
I think he gets tagged and plays on the tag. I think Bill's right, and I think that's probably what the Cowboys will do based on everything I've heard. They need to get a long-term deal done this offseason with Zach Martin. Get that offensive line locked in. That's a bigger piece of business, I think, for them right now. And yes, they want to see it again. That is the situation with DeMarcus Lawrence. Do it again, and we'll talk deal. And the Cowboys have a pretty good recent history of taking care of their guys. So if he does have another big year, there's no reason for him to think that he won't get what he ultimately wants.
I'm telling you this, talking to an opposing coach. This guy worried people this year when you went up against the Dallas Cowboys. There were people who said, look, you better know where number 90 is.
Yep.
Like, he is as good as there is in the NFL in terms of being a every down run, pass rush player. He is that legit.
And it's worth noting that the pass rushers that got tagged last year, Jason Pierre-Paul, Melvin Ingram, got deals done, got long-term deals done before the deadline. But to the point you guys were making, they had more in the bank, I think, than this guy does with the one big year.
There's a lot of red flags here. Keeps you up at night.
No question.
The points you make are well taken.
No question.
No question about it.
All right, so you got the thumbs up from Bill Polian there, who's done this many of times. So we're talking a lot about defense, but we know they still have to deal with the contract of Dez Bryant. So they have several challenges that they're going to have to get through here in terms of restructuring contracts and coming up with deals. So let's play a quick game of panic or patience here. The Cowboys can solve their offseason question marks. Lou, start with you. Panic or patience, they can get this stuff done.
Dad's looking at me like, what are you going to say? You know what? I'm patient. I like the direction that the Cowboys are going. This is a football team that missed one of their workhorses, their primary workhorse for a large part of the season this year, and they were still in it. They were still competitive. This is not the Cowboys of old, although people would like for them to be because it's fashionable to beat on the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. But I think offensively they will take care of the offensive line. Zeke will come back healthy. Dak will continue to grow. They will address the wide receiver position. They'll figure out what to do with Dez Bryant. And on the defensive side, they will continue to fortify the front, get some help at the secondary position, and get some more healthy bodies at linebacker. I think Dallas is on the right track. I'm not panicked about them at all.
Bill, panic or patience that the Cowboys can answer all their question marks during this offseason?
Patience. They were 9-7 last year, for goodness sake. This is a really good team. And by the way, they'll get their bell cow running back. They'll get their left tackle back. And all of a sudden, that offense is going to be scintillating again. So I'm patient.
Dan?
I have no reason to disagree with either of those guys.
And he wants to.
I would. I absolutely would. But in this particular case,
he wants to,
I happen to agree. I think the point about them being their down year was 9-7. I think that's pretty much all you need to know.
So no concern there. So in terms of Dez Bryant, though, really quickly to go around the horn, how do you think they come to an agreement, and do they?
I think they'll come to an agreement. I do. Jerry Jones has a pretty good history of these kinds of relationships and things working out. I mean, it's easy to look at it from the outside and say, no way Dez will take a pay cut, and obviously no way they'll pay him what he's getting now. But sometimes the relationship between Jerry and the player is a little different than in a lot of organizations.
And Dez has been pretty vocal that he wants to stay in Dallas. That's his home now.
Flap. Pustule. Jowls. Nugget. Gurgle. Smear. Bulbous. Pork.
If you hear certain words on the job site,
Baloney.
work can be uncomfortable.
Tender.
So at least get work gear that's comfortable. Timberland Pro work shirts, pants, and boots. Head to toe, Timberland Pro. Not uncomfortable.
Moist.
Don't go Baker Mayfield, Johnny Football, the Heisman Trophy winner, wasn't surprised by the comparisons that he's been getting to Johnny Manziel. But he said this recently. He said, we're two different people. I've always been a team-oriented guy, not saying that Johnny wasn't, but I've quickly earned the respect of my teammates because of how I worked. I wasn't giving the natural talent that Johnny had because he's a talent. And there's a reason he got taken in the first round. An amazing player. We're just not the same guys mentally. We're just wired differently. That's his response when he was asked about all the different comparisons he's been getting to Johnny Manziel, who you know right now is trying to get back into the NFL. Welcome into the Red Zone. This is where we dig a little deeper on the hot topics. Bill Polian, Riddick, Dan Graziano. On this topic here, though, I want to start with Bill. I want you to take me through the process of making a decision on a quarterback based on his character. How do you greenlight a player when you know there are some issues?
Well, first of all, you investigate. Let's start right from the get-go. First of all, the Heisman Trophy means zero when we talk about the NFL. No one pays any attention to it. What you really pay attention to is what is the guy's makeup, what is his intelligence, what is his ability to function under pressure, how does he process information, and then is he a good citizen? How does he live his life off the field and inside the building? Those are the general areas that you study. And the best predictor of present behavior and future behavior is past behavior. So you look into that in detail. Baker Mayfield, so far as I know, has none of the problems that Johnny Manziel had. Mm-hmm. There's some issues, planting the flag, et cetera. Those are not issues that would bother me one iota as a general manager. So in that sense, they appear to be two different people.
Yeah, personal character and football character is how I always keep it straight in my mind. Obviously, personal character, you want the guy to be compliant in society, right? I mean, you don't want him getting arrested. You don't want him embarrassing himself, embarrassing the organization to where then he becomes a liability as far as his availability. And there are things that you're going to want to ask Baker about and make sure that he's got under control. But look, again, nothing to the point where, as Bill alluded to, where you're going, nah, take him off the board. No, we can't trust him. Football character is what, in the end, for me, is what it is really all about. And football character is, how much do you love this game? And that's that's the $1 million question all the time. And you can arrive at that answer a million different ways. But I don't think anyone from watching Baker Mayfield play from afar or anybody that you'll talk to who's been around him will say Baker Mayfield doesn't really invest totally in the game and in the team concept and in being there for his buddies and people want to play for him. And that is the biggest compliment you can pay to any player.
But Johnny Manziel said he loved the game.
He did. He did. Believe me, he did. His issues were not on the field. Johnny Manziel's issues were off the field.
But there were in the building issues with Manziel in Cleveland. There were, after his first year in Cleveland, you heard things from inside that building about how he wasn't taking things seriously enough in practice and in team meetings. And the attitude that he had around the facility was not what they wanted, and that they had talked to him about it and it hadn't gotten better. So I think that's a big part of this, too. And the comparison stuff, and this is the part of the draft process that I just absolutely cannot stand. Like, we want to, who is this guy? Who is he going to be like? It's not fair to do it to these kids. Baker Mayfield's getting this comparison because, he's not super big and he's done some knucklehead things on camera, and it makes you think, is he going to be like Johnny Manziel? Johnny Manziel didn't make it in the NFL because his game wasn't going to translate to the NFL. And when he got to the NFL, by all accounts, he wasn't willing to put in the work to see how close he could get to that. And I think if we're going to judge Baker Mayfield on that, we would need to have some evidence that he wasn't dedicated to his work at Oklahoma, and I don't think we have that.
Which I can't really speak for Baker, but I would venture to say this. When he makes the statement that, in the end of that statement where he said, we're just wired different, I would bet that that's what he's alluding to. That really look, all the other, some of the gestures that he has made and some of the things that he has said to opponents and all, look, that to me, some people get turned off by it. That to me, look, football isn't for the faint of heart. There's some things that go on out there, ladies and gentlemen, that you may not like and approve of. That to me is a plus for me. Baker loves this game. Baker loves to compete. Baker loves to win with his teammates in a way that, quite honestly, I never saw Johnny display that kind of quote-unquote passion for the game. And I know we're talking about something very abstract, and you can say, well, other people will see that very differently. I see Baker Mayfield forget the football playing part of it. I see him much differently than I saw Johnny Manziel coming out.
Bill, when a player is coming into the draft getting comparisons to guys like Johnny Manziel, right, it's obviously something he doesn't want. He's saying that they're different. Do you think an owner that was going to draft him is going to have to give the approval on Baker Mayfield?
No, I don't think so. He'll trust his football people. The football people pay no attention to what we say. Excuse me, but that's a fact. They don't. They pay attention to what they see, what they hear from their own people, what they get from their investigations. Stories in the media do nothing but tell them, okay, I got to check this out. They don't believe him to start with.
Yeah.
And so this kid has none of the problems that Johnny Manziel had. Cleveland got what they deserved.
That's true.
When people did their homework on Johnny Manziel, as everybody will on Baker Mayfield, they were well aware that Johnny had problems that might affect his playing in the National Football League. And Cleveland ignored them. And so they got what they deserved. This kid, as Lou said, shows, at least to this point, from what I can tell and what we've heard from other people, the two of us were at the Senior Bowl, there are none of those issues. So there's no reason for an owner to weigh in on this.
With Johnny Manziel, you knew it was well known that he liked to party, that he liked to drink. I mean, I'm not telling tales out of school here. This has all been out there. With Baker Mayfield, what we have is a guy who doesn't always show the kind of respect for his opponent that maybe his NFL coaches hope he will. And
there's a
he's
certain
a young guy.
that
can get better.
There's a certain natural maturity or maturation process that Baker still needs to go through. There's no question about that. We're not saying that he's perfect. I'm just saying this, though. I agree 100%. Intuitively, when I watched these two guys, when Johnny was coming out, if no one had told me anything, and watching Baker Mayfield, I see these guys much differently. The only reason why it's a lazy, easy comparison to make. They're both small, both, sub 6 foot, right at 6 foot quarterbacks who play in wide open systems down there. And, it's a lazy, easy comparison that I think is dangerous to make. It very much so is.
And during that interview process when he meets with teams, Bill, if there's one question you could ask Baker Mayfield just to find out a little bit more about him, was there a go-to question you always use to find out about character?
No. There's a test. There's a series of questions. It is a process. There are no silver bullets. It's hard work, shoe leather, testing, analysis.
Back here on NFL Live today, the first day teams can place franchise tags on players, and we are keeping our eyes wide open. Our ears, too. Could the Dolphins franchise tag Jarvis Landry or even let him walk in free agency? Landry coming off a season where he set a franchise single record, 112 receptions, caught 9 career-high touchdown passes. Jarvis Landry certainly piled up a lot of catches since he started his career in Miami. He logged a whopping 400 catches since he entered the NFL in 2014. That's easily the most by any player in his first 4 seasons in NFL history, and 58 more than the next closest player on that list, which is Anquan Boldin. And let's show you a memorable moment against the Jets. Here's Landry in the slot, loses the defender, makes the catch right over the middle, but look at the hurdle, Lou. What kind of skills you need there?
This is nice. I like him. All
right, well, it was a 17-yard gain for Landry, but the Jets, no doubt, would be thinking about that hurdle for a long time. Could the Jets use a receiver? Are they in the market for that?
They could.
They could use one.
They could.
All right, so here's what we're doing. When the season actually gets here, when it begins, guys, I want to ask you, is Jarvis Landry going to be tagged, long-term deal, or was he picked up in free agency?
I think he plays somewhere else next year. I think, and again, this is an educated guess at the beginning of the franchise tag window. But I think there's a strong chance that they don't get it done. They've been at work on this contract for a while. My understanding is the fundamental disagreement is between Jarvis Landry and the Dolphins. They see him as a slot receiver, an excellent slot receiver, but a slot receiver, and he wants to be paid like a top-level receiver. The franchise tags are going to be about $16.2 million. If the Dolphins wanted to pay him that, I think they probably would have by now. And so I think this is one worth watching. If they tag him, it indicates to me that they feel like they're close to a deal. And if they don't tag him, it indicates to me like they feel like they couldn't get a deal done with him.
Yeah, I would see him being somewhere else also, because I would have, and I'm not saying that they don't need his contributions, but I think relative to where they see him fitting in with the rest of the wide receivers in the NFL and what he brings to the table, despite the fact that he catches balls at a very, very high clip, it's the average per catch, it's the explosive playmaking ability, the ability to win on the outside lane like the top-paid wide receivers get in the NFL. He doesn't win on the outside like Julio. He doesn't win on the outside like A.J. Green. He doesn't win on the outside like A.B. He's not that guy, and I think that's where they're butting heads right there. He sees himself one way. Slot receivers have never been paid like that.
Right.
They've never been paid like the top players, and they're not right now. So I think I could see a scenario where he's not on this roster also because of that fundamental difference.
I would use the non-exclusive tag on him to see if someone's willing to give me 2 ones if I match. And if I don't match, I should say. And that's where it's at. I don't think they can afford to lose him. He's a good football player, and they don't have very many good football players.
Non-exclusive tag, but you two see him on different teams there. All right, then we got the case of Allen Robinson, right? He tore his ACL in week 1 this past season. The former second-round pick just 2 seasons removed from leading the NFL with 14 touchdown catches. So Robinson, of course, coming off this injury, still just only 24 years old. So, guys, at the start of the season, when we get this thing going, what are the Jags going to do here? They're going to tag him? They're going to agree to a long-term deal? Or is he going to go to another team through free agency? Starting with you, Lou.
Yeah, I think he'll sign a long-term deal. I think Allen Robinson. Look, I'm not trying to compare Allen Robinson with Jarvis Landry, but he's the kind of guy. Look, he's an outside lane one-on-one winner, a down-the-field high riser who can win jump balls and catch the ball at an amazing explosive play clip. I like Allen Robinson. The problem is he's coming off of an injury, which will suppress his value naturally so, and will cause the team to go, okay, look, we need to protect ourselves a little bit in the event that you don't return to previous form. But I think for Allen and for the Jaguars, I think it behooves them both to kind of come together and get a long-term deal done here. I don't think he would. I wouldn't say he wouldn't want to test the market, But I think if he wanted to test the mark, he'd want to do it coming off of a healthy season. I just think he'll wind up being a Jaguar. Let's put it that way.
Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll get a deal done. I think the injury helps the situation in some respects because he's not going to be able to go ahead and break the bank after missing an entire year. But I think they want him on the team. I still think they view him as their best receiver when he's healthy, even as well as they managed to do with these other guys this year. I think he's a different kind of guy, and I believe he'll be on the Jaguars on a new contract.
I'm not so sure, although I think you could put the non-exclusive tag on him and live with the number. But I'm not so sure they'll do it. I got a feeling that they felt they made it to the championship game without him.
Yep.
And
they can do it
stuck
again
with Bortles' number because of the injury.
Right.
I don't know if they can fit him in.
Yep. All right, let's stick with the theme of wide receivers eligible to be tagged or become unrestricted free agents. A chain of scenery was quite good for Sammy Watkins last season as a trade sent him from Buffalo to the Rams. And the former fourth overall pick led Sean McVay's team with 8 touchdown catches. He produced some big plays there when the time came last season, earned his yards in chunks. He had a habit of doing that since he came in the league in 2014, averaging nearly 16 yards per catch in the time. That's the third highest mark in the NFL among players with at least 100 catches. He trails just Deshaun Jackson and T.Y. Hilton. Let's take a look at his memorable moment. This came back in Week 9 against the New York Giants. Here's Sammy split out wide here. Jared Goff just launches this one deep. Hits Watkins right in stride. A 67-yard touchdown catch. It was Watkins' only catch of the game. Certainly was a big one and certainly was memorable as he gets congratulated by his teams on the sideline. And for real, what a change of scenery and what a great job Sean McVay was able to do with figuring out how to get the most out of Watkins there. So here we are. So when the season begins, guys, is he going to be tagged, long-term deal, free agency, new team?
I think he's signed. I think he'll be on the Rams next year. They may tag him in the meantime while they get a deal done, but my understanding is they want him on next year's team. They valued his contributions this year, even though the numbers weren't great, and they have bigger plans for him as the offense continues to evolve and as Jared Goff continues to develop.
If we're trying to predict what the Rams are going to do, look, I would assume that they try and sign him to a long-term deal. What would I do? I darn sure wouldn't tag him, and it would have to be a team-friendly long-term deal for me that really emphasizes consistency of performance, especially in big moments, because Sammy Watkins, for me, for as much production as he has had as far as being an explosive playmaker, in big moments for me, he was disappointing this year. Mm-hmm. So it would have to be a team-friendly deal for me because I feel as though you could replace that production. You could find that production somewhere else.
Are you in agreement?
I am in total agreement with Lewis. I would not give him a long-term deal, and if he left, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Well, it's checkmate time for Le'Veon Bell and others as the 2-week window to franchise tag players opens up today. And on the NFL calendar, the scouting combine starts on February 27th, so we're just about a week away. And free agency begins on March 14th, about 3 weeks from now. But before then, teams will try to keep their key players with the franchise tag. Here's our Michelle Steele with Bell at the Pro Bowl.
I think we're a lot closer, this year at this point of the season or at this point of the off season rather than last year, and I'm confident, like I said, both sides we've been, happy with the progression we've been doing, and I'm excited. The running back position, it kind of gets overlooked. The market is really down, and I feel like I'm a player who can, kind of set it right, at least start bringing it back in the right direction. So, and obviously I want to be happy for myself and a number that I'm happy with.
All right, back here in studio, Dan Graziano, Louis Riddick, and Bill Polian. I'm Dianna Russini. So, guys, you just heard Bell. It was just a few weeks ago when he gave those remarks to our Michelle Steele. I first just want to get your reaction when a player's in that situation in terms of how he answered that question. Bill, what did it sound like to you?
It sounded okay. I mean, he talked about resetting the running back market. I think that's probably his agent speaking through him. That's fine. No problem. It's not going to enter the discussion. but it's okay to say it. Where the rubber hits the road is in the negotiations. And it sounded a little bit like they had made some progress. So that's a good thing if you're a Steeler fan.
So you say him setting the market the organization doesn't care about that. That's your point.
I do not. And if I wouldn't speak about it with an agent.
Well, I think he's already going to set the market. I mean, he's going to be the highest paid running back. Yeah. Is it going to be at a number commensurate with what he thinks it should be, given the fact that he thinks he's such a unique weapon, which he is, but to use that phrase, and I know Mike Tomlin used that phrase, where the rubber meets the road is where's the rubber for both of your tires going to meet the road together? And they can't just blow the running back market to smithereens because Le'Veon wants it to be. It just doesn't work like that. They have to do the best deal within the parameters of what is best for the club because they have other things to do about this football team still. And I know Le'Veon's trying to maximize cash to himself. Of course he should. He knows the position he plays. He knows the injuries that he's gone through. He knows what he's had to come back from. So, of course, he's going to sit here and he's going to posture the way he's going to posture. The Steelers are going to be quiet and trying to just do it the way that they have always done it. He's going to get paid handsomely if he wants to accept it. Or he'll play on that tag, or he won't play on the tag and he'll give up all the money.
Yeah, the crux of the issue is not resetting the running back market. It's by how much.
Right.
His franchise number this past year already reset the market. It was over $12 million. And the next highest paid running back, as we mentioned earlier, Devontae Freeman, $8.25. Maybe David Johnson gets a deal done, an extension done in the meantime that goes past Devontae Freeman. But it's not going to go past by $4 or $5 million a year. And Bell's franchise tag is going to be $14.5 million. That is significant. That's almost 50% higher than the next highest paid running back. He's resetting the market by doing nothing.
Right.
And the argument that the agent would make is, and this is the number that the agent I'm sure is pushing for, he's going toward AB's number because he's going to say, look, this guy contributes as much, both running and passing, as AB. He's got a little bit of an argument. The franchise tag takes him almost there. So it seems to me that there's a room here, as long as you're reasonable within those parameters, to get a deal done. And it sounded as though they were on the right track. I know the Steelers would love to get him signed. They just can't do a contract that's going to reverberate throughout the organization. So that's where his side, Le'Veon's side, has to give a little bit.
Yeah. And, Lou made that point earlier in the show that they need that money to fix that defense, to fix that secondary, which could be the reason why they're going to hold it.
And you know what? As much as Le'Veon has a case for saying, look, when we reset this offense, whenever we get in trouble, they come to me. Mm-hmm. They give the ball to me. They run me into the ground. I'm the one pounding the ball between the tackles. They don't start throwing it around. They say, hey, okay, look, can you get those 4 yards, those 6 yards, make it 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3? Can I do it? But the club is going to say there's a different level of risk between paying you and paying AB.
Yep.
Okay? One, we've already seen it by your injuries, by your availability, and two, by nature of the position. That's why the negotiation is fascinating to me, is how much. That's what you said. How much does he reset the market by?
All right, so that's one running back situation. It's to be decided at this point. But another running back in Tampa Bay, of course, two-time Pro Bowl, Doug Martin, was released today, and he released this statement on Twitter. He said, today was bittersweet. I hate to leave my teammates when there is still work to be done, but I respect the organization's decision. I'm in the best shape of my life physically and mentally, and my best football is ahead of me. I look forward to the next stage of my career while wishing everyone in Tampa Bay the very best. All right, yesterday was a really fun day here on the show. We talked about the potential Nick Foles trade, and Bill Polian basically said if he was the Eagles GM, he would not be answering the phone. But if he had to answer the phone, the only thing he's listening to is 2 number ones and 2 number twos in terms of a trade. So you got a lot of pushback on that on social media. A lot of blogs writing about it. A lot of people on Twitter going, Bill Polian is crazy. So here's your opportunity to explain why.
Well, it's not the first time someone said that.
Well, it was actually me tweeting.
Nor will it be the last.
Explain it more.
Well, that price is what was paid to go up and get Carson Wentz, Goff, and RG3. That general framework was the price. So if you're willing to pay that price to go up and get a guy that has never played a down in the National Football League, what should the price be for a guy who has a young quarterback, had a winning record under Chip Kelly, and now as a little older veteran backup won the 3 biggest games of the year, including the Super Bowl. So to me, that's a fair price based on history. If I were on the other side of that phone and calling them, I know full well, regardless of anything I said, you better open with a 1. Number 1, they don't want to trade him. Number 2, you got to make it worth their while, and you better put a 1 on the table or don't make the call.
That's the only way you think the Eagles would even probably take the call.
Take the call is the operative phrase. Yes.
Yeah. But for a team that is looking to get Nick Foles, are you guys in agreement? Lou, I'll start with you. Do you agree with Bill that it's got to include a 1?
No question about it. And you know what? Before you even sit here really and get all wrapped up about what will it take to get him, if you're going to enter into that realm anyway, as far as trying to pull him, get him off of that roster, the first thing you better do is, can you duplicate what they have in Philadelphia in terms of synergy between him and the play caller, the offense, the terminology, the weaponry, the defense, the special teams, Nick's level of comfort? Because I'm assuming if you're going to give up that, if Bill's answering the phone and saying 2 1s, 2 2s, or don't talk to me, okay? I'm assuming that if I'm willing to even enter into those kind of negotiations, I can set my guy up for the kind of you're trying to buy those 3 games, that kind of performance. Yeah. You're trying to buy the Atlanta Falcon game, the Minnesota Viking game, and the game against the New England Patriots. Otherwise, you don't even enter this realm, which I don't know how you can do. I don't know how you can guarantee that you can set him up like that for that kind of success, because to me, as far as what expectations would be if you paid that price, that's what you better get.
Yeah, you can't. And that's why I don't think there's any – I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere, because the price that the Eagles will demand is higher than what any team should reasonably pay for. Yeah. Because of what you're just saying. Yeah. You know, when he had Chip Kelly and LaShawn McCoy and a killer offensive line, he had a monster year. When he had Doug Peterson and a killer offensive line and all the weapons the Eagles had this year, he had a great playoff run. You cannot be sure that that's what you're bringing into your organization. And if you're going to trade a first-round pick, you'd better be sure that's what you're bringing into your organization. Well, now, you talk about the first-round price, right?
People sure on RG3?
You know what I was about to say? That's the interesting part, though, is that teams will be willing to do that for something that is totally unknown and unproven.
Because that's the way that teams operate. And you know this full well. That's the way teams operate in the draft. Nick Foles is 29. You're drafting a guy who's 22. You are willing to pay a little bit more, thinking what you can make him into.
Believe me, quarterbacks play a long time. Nick Foles has probably got 7 years left. That's probably more than
from the perspective of the acquiring team. That's why the younger player is more enticing, right? You still see more of his prime, and you can mold something. I'm with you. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's an apples-to-apples comparison when you talk about teams moving up in the draft, because of the way teams feel about draft picks versus the way they might feel about Nick Foles, whose career has had obviously some incredibly brilliant highs, but also we've seen him, have stretches where he didn't have.
You know what it's called, Dan? It's called arrogance.
Sure.
Is what it is called on the part of teams. That they'll be willing to do this for something that has never been touched, so to speak, right? A young player coming into the league that's has no kind of preconceived notions about how the game's supposed to be played, what he's been taught, has no relationships with anybody in the league. Teams always go, I'll pay the exorbitant price for that, because now it's all about me, the genius play caller, the genius quarterback whisperer, who I'll make him into that guy. With Nick, I can't necessarily do it, because he's shown me that he's shown me that he can do it, but only under certain circumstances. That's what it is.
Well, plus, the front offices are playing the market to a certain extent, too. I mean, you don't want to buy high and sell low. It's the opposite, right? You're buying high on Nick Foles if you acquire him now.
Buying high?
He just won the Super Bowl.
You're buying blind on a rookie.
Well, of course. Low?
Yeah. 2 1s and 2 2s.
Well, buying low. You have the asset is coming in, and it's at low value.
But, but
I'm going to pay.
I'm not arguing that front offices are all smart.
$60,000.
But you know,
for a car that's never been driven.
But it's the arrogance he's talking about.
Exactly. That's all it is.
Right.
That's all it is right there.
Yeah.
Because he makes a great point. The point is you're buying something I don't know. It has no resume.
Teams will go nuts to get at RG3.
That's right. Because
and then they'll be conservative on Nick Foles. And the right answer is probably somewhere in the middle.
Have you ever met an offense?
Probably shouldn't go that nuts to get RG3. And probably if you're a quarterback away, it might be worth a
Have you ever met an offensive coordinator or a quarterback coach who doesn't think that they can reinvent quarterback play?
Of course.
No.
They are.
Not a one.
That's the whole thing that drives
Not a one.
Right? I can make this guy into something.
All right. And with Nick, it's almost like, well, you know what?
There have been very few coaches who thought that about Nick Foles.
No question.
One of them's coaching the Chiefs. One of them's coaching the Eagles. It may be that one is now coaching the Colts.
It's not maybe, it is.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you.
Most of the league has not felt that way about Nick Foles throughout his career.
Which, if I'm the rest of the league, just let him stay in Philly.
Who's got a ring?
He's got the ring. And
just let him stay in
got a
Philly.
ring?
Exactly.
Just let him stay there.
Not.
Yeah, so
Go pay up for your own.
All you Bill Polian haters out there, take that. All right, back here on NFL Live. Despite living pretty close to Arlington, Texas, where the 2018 draft will be held, Heisman Trophy winner Baker Mayfield will not attend it in person. This according to NBC5 Dallas. So, of course, there's lots of speculation as to why he doesn't want to attend. And sometimes people just want to avoid the embarrassment in case something goes a little awkward like we've seen before. Geno Smith showed on the first day, expecting his name to get called. He waited, but the Jets didn't call his name. Then Aaron Rodgers would go number 1 overall in 2005, but the Niners instead took Alex Smith. Rodgers slid all the way to 24, and then in 2007, many thought Cleveland would draft quarterback Brady Quinn 3rd overall, but the team took tackle Joe Thomas. So it could get a little awkward. That's all right. Welcome into the Verizon film room, Louis Riddick. Never awkward here on NFL Live, fortunately. You've spent a lot of time looking at film and watching in person Oklahoma quarterback Baker Mayfield. He is intriguing. Lou, when you think about him as a quarterback right now at this point, what do you see?
Diana, I see a gamer. I see a guy that as the stakes ramp up, as it becomes 11 on 11, this guy is at his best, and he's at his best in the critical areas of the football field, namely the red zone, which you see a lot of. You're going to see a lot of clips here of him being able to be the kind of guy who can just buy time, keep his eyes down the field, play with great vision, and throw the ball with accuracy. And that's something that I saw in red zone periods down at the Senior Bowl practices. He's just spectacular in that way. He's a guy who just really galvanizes players. Players want to be around him. He has a magnetic personality. That's not something I know in this day and age of statistics that you can print out on a piece of paper, but it's something that makes all the difference.
And we talked about it earlier in this show. Despite the fact that he's getting those comparisons to Johnny Manziel, based on just what you're seeing in terms of his passion and love for the game and his discipline, and the quote he gave about how he's just wired different. You're buying into that.
Yeah, I am. Until proven otherwise, I kind of like what he's bringing to the table from a football character perspective. I think it'll play well in NFL locker rooms. He must produce. Otherwise, that will wear thin, but he must produce, and I think he understands that.
Lou, what are you seeing in USC's Sam Darnold? When you're taking a look at his film, what stands out to you?
Look, he's got tremendous physical skills, and he's another guy who instinctively can go off schedule and make plays all over the football field in terms of throwing the ball laterally and throwing the ball down the football field. What's interesting to me about him is that very rarely I saw Sam Darnold in 2017 actually throw the football with good, tight, solid mechanics, even in situations where he had clean pocket throws, and some of his accuracy suffered as a result of that. But he's the kind of guy who can get outside the pocket, throw the ball on the run. He can pick up first downs with his feet. He has a tremendous skill set and has a tremendous temperament. Got to talk to him at the Super Bowl. He's going to go very, very high. He just needs to kind of clean up some of the things that will help him be more consistent as far as his accuracy is concerned.
Yeah. 4 quarterbacks slated to go in the first round. He knocked off 2. Let's go to the third. UCLA's Josh Rosen.
Yeah, Josh Rosen is probably the cleanest in terms of his mechanics and how he makes it look as far as playing the quarterback position technically. He's a guy who looks very comfortable working from under center, very smooth in his drops, 3, 5, and 7-step drops, 2 hands on the football, classic over-the-top release, very good as far as working through progressions, using feints, using look-offs to try and move defenders. He does all those types of things. Now, what's interesting at UCLA is he's a guy who really liked to throw the football to tight ends and work the middle of the football field. I had some concern about his ability throwing the ball outside the numbers down the field. We'll see how that goes. I look forward to seeing him at the Combine as well.
We got a Baker, we got a Sam, we got 2 Joshes. The other Josh Allen. What do you see from him?
Like, I blow some people's minds when I talk about this guy in terms of what I thought the very first time I turned on the film and saw him with those long white socks and standing tall in the pocket out there. I said, you know what, if you put a 13 on him, like that throw right there, rolling out to his right and throwing the football down the field in the corner of the end zone. There's a guy who played for the University of Pittsburgh named Dan Marino when he was in college, looked like that, with throwing the football. That right there that I'm talking about, his physical gifts are tremendous. Can throw the football a mile, can put it on a rope. When we were down at the Senior Bowl with Bill and I, you hear the ball going through the air, and you hear that.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like when he throws it.
Yeah, because coming from so high.
The question is, can he put it where it needs to be consistently, and can he process information fast enough so teams don't get a jump on him? He made those improvements during the week down there. He's going to be a very talked about polarizing subject matter when it comes to where is he going to go in the draft, because most people don't think you can improve accuracy, and I tend to be one of those.
All right, ripped right through those. Those are the Cliff Notes. The Lewis Cliff
Pretty
Notes.
quick, huh?
Yeah, not
Too
bad.
bad.
It's Hat Tuesday here. We're going to go through this. What we are all in on for this offseason. So, Dan, which team in the NFL are you all in on?
Because I thought we were doing a football show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all in on the guy who's off season. I'm all in on is Chris Long of the Eagles. I just like everything he's about. I think he's a Super Bowl champion 2 years in a row. He's climbing Kilimanjaro. He's all over the community. I just think he's no one's killing it more. Maybe Juju, but other than Juju,
legit.
I think Chris Long. But I thought we were doing a football show, so I guess
we are.
I didn't get the memo.
It's a sports.
On the
sports.
It is a sports show. He is a former baseball writer, by the way.
Yeah.
How about that, Dan? Tell people
He also wrote romance novels, but that was a different show. What about
We talked
you?
about that last week.
What am I all in on this offseason? We were talking about this, like, who would we want to spend our offseason with? Somebody like Juju Schuster. I'm all in on the Yankees and, like, Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. I want to be around those guys because those guys are just studs. Aaron Judge came in here, and I'll tell you what, when I saw this guy, I was sitting there, I literally shook his hand, and I was like this.
Yeah.
Like just staring at him like this, and Giancarlo Stanton is a stud. And you know what? I can bat left-handed and wiffle ball. It looks natural, doesn't it?
No, you like
natural?
money.
Huh?
That's what you
Oh, I love their money, too. There's no
money.
question about that. I'd love to have their direct deposits every 2 weeks. Does this look good?
But no, actually, I was just going
Is this Joe Morgan?
tuck it in.
Tuck it in. Okay,
Got to
yeah.
teach him something.
That's what I'm liking. So I want to spend my offseason with those guys.
Mr. Polian, what do you got? What are you all in on this offseason?
I want to go and spend my offseason with our former colleague and buddy, Aaron Boone.
Look at that.
From the Bronx, the Bronx
That's
Bomber.
what I'm saying. Look how that Yankee helmet just shines.
Look at that, man.
Are you a Yankee fan?
Yes.
Obviously from the Bronx there?
I'm an Aaron Boone fan,
An
too.
Aaron Boone fan.
Look out,
that.
baby.
Bill has a pretty nice swing.
Yeah, it looked like a nice single to right.
All right. All right.
No bat speed anymore.
Yeah, just get on base.
Do you think Aaron Judge is going to have another season? How many home runs
Lewis,
do you think he's going to
I do. Over 50.
Over 50?
Yes. 5 o'clock lightning in the Bronx.
Yeah,
I like your football takes.
Hey,
With Giancarlo there.
Bandwagon stuff
me.
going on.
Oh, yeah, you have to do something here.
Yeah, I'm all in, because it's a
got
football
hockey.
show. I'm all in on the Cleveland Browns during the offseason. They have $110 million in cap space. They've got all these draft picks. And my thought is, if they cannot get it right this year, they should be relegated to the CFL. They should just be kicked out. But I'm all in because I think they can actually get it done.
Well, they'll win as many games this offseason as they did this season. I know that.
Jenny had a dream of joining the national bobsled team. She worked out relentlessly and knew that if she just refused to give up, one day her dream would come true and she'd stand triumphantly up on the podium. But when her kids reminded her that she was 52 and she lived in Texas, and maybe she started dreaming this dream a little late in life, she gave up on not giving up. But then she heard how Geico could save her money on car insurance, so she switched and achieved that dream instead.